Okay, guys, welcome to week 3. So, this is going to be a fun one, and this is where life and everybody has a little bit of life comes into play when it comes to coaching. So, I'm really grateful for weeks like this because it gives you a little bit more insight into just say from like a client aspect, how we handle that, how that works. Because I think what happens a lot of times when people are considering like healthy lifestyle or getting some support, do I get a personal trainer? I think that I can do the nutrition side. I'm just going to follow this influencer, like whatever. When life happens, is when having a coach that knows you and that can walk through all of the variables that might be a part of what you're going through is like super important and is the game changer overall, right? And having somebody outside of my head, because it's easy for me to get in my head, especially with weeks like I had last week. So I kind of alluded to this on last week's vlog because, in all honesty, I recorded it, I think, on Thursday, and all of the stuff for what I'm recording for today, physically wise, hit on Monday. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning. I was barely able to walk. So I have this wonderful stuff with my nervous system and my nerves that sometimes I just get excruciating pain. And it's a little bit different every time. And it's not always a right or left legs. It switches between the two of them. But literally, I will be in so much pain that I cannot walk. I cannot roll over. Getting on and off of the toilet is really difficult. So I say all that to say this is what I did about it as far as my nutrition, my workouts, thinking about steps, all of the things with my plan and my coach. So first and foremost, obviously I communicated to my coach slash husband, which will be super cute. We will what I will do here, I'll lean over in a minute and we'll add his exact verbiage because I want you to be able to see what that looks like a little bit later. But just for the nuts and bolts of what weight wise and things of that nature, we'll do that. Then you know that I couldn't move last week for those dates. And then we'll go into the changes that we made, just like normal, so that you're getting the full scope of this. So, technically, as far as weight is concerned, the week before I was 140. And then the check in day this week that I turned in was 138.1. So, like roughly about 2 pounds, right? So, most people would be super excited about that. But the days after, and I communicated this verbally to Tim, I would have messaged it on WhatsApp, just like, that's what our client would have done for us too. Like if it was something that they wanted to go, hey, I know that I was 2 pounds down by check-in, but just FYI, like I'm really at 139 the 2 days since, and 139 was kind of that average, regardless, which honestly is not bad at all considering what all happened. But the things that I did. So I was already in a bad place. I'm not going to stress my body trying to work out, like not even upper body. I didn't worry about trying to do band workouts, whatever, because the priority last week was rest and recovery. I stayed on my nutrition. So I still ate my food right on plan. There was one day that I was a little bit off on food, and that was because I normally do our grocery shopping. And I couldn't walk last week, so I couldn't go to the grocery store. So I had to make a few tweaks. And to be completely honest, I felt a little bit defeated. And I just let myself, and honestly, for y'all, me going off the rails was like I had some dates with almond butter in addition to my meal plan. So it's not like most people when they go like off the rails, off the rails. But anyway, just to be completely transparent, because I'm not here to hide anything from you or my coach. So that was it as far as like nuts and bolts. My sleep was obviously terrible. My sleep score was like 58 to 70 for 3 nights in a row. So, obviously that's not helpful for your body. I had extreme fatigue last week. Mentally, like everything was hard. Literally everything was hard. And I had some other things going on. Um, Outside of just like the physical side that just made it a heavy week. On top of that, I started my cycle. So that's another variable to consider, especially for our female clients. And then last but not least, on where I had struggles, concerns, or just things that I wanted to add to, was just very honest. I'm like, I kind of am getting like a little fatigued in eating this same three vegetables. I have vegetables in a lot of my meals, like pretty much every meal. And I went from having fruit in almost every meal also to just having fruit like one time a day. And quite frankly, I love fruit. It's kind of like your like the natural like dessert, right? So just kind of voiced that. So we talked out just being able to swap out my, remember last week the change was we put some more carbs in breakfast because I was getting hungry. I wasn't staying satiated as long. So we switched it to potatoes. So we changed the source last week. So this week I have plenty of carbs to work with there. So what I did was just take my carb count, still kept a majority of potatoes because the whole point in us making that shift was to keep me full longer, right? But I took some of the potato portion of those carbs and I'm doing fruit in the morning now. So that has definitely helped since I've implemented to that, but just from a, personal standpoint, sustainability standpoint, it's like, hey, I need a little bit more fruit in my diet if we can make that work. So we did do that. But then this is where I'm going to move over because here is where we're going to put just kind of Tim's like feedback to me specifically on what was going on. And this is the piece that's so important when you have a coach, right? So Tim has a coach. I have a coach, like I have somebody outside of my head. Even though I help coach other people, when you're in it yourself, it's harder to see. So let me go back to so I can pull it up. And that way you can also see our flirtatious. He doesn't flirt with our clients. I'm his wife, so that's why there's flirting in this message. But anyway, just he's really just talking through, why it makes sense in the shifts, assures me that we're still on plan, right on track, even though being the third week of my cut. Um, my expenditure going up, my cortisol will be coming down, my so we'll be able to see like where my body truly is. But here's the reason why I really want to point this out. It's 3 weeks, roughly 21 days. This is where when people aren't seeing like major shifts, they're like, oh, it's not working. I need to jump ship. Shiny object. Let me go chase that. Let me do that. Let me take this. Don't do that. Trust the process. So this is exactly why we're doing this vlog is because things like this are super, super important. So it's important to flirt with your husband and your wife, right? So that's him. My flirtation is back over here. So Tim, part of his major love language is words of affirmation. So there's never any telling where he might find a note that I write. The problem for me is I don't like sticky notes all over the place. And then once I write them, he doesn't want me to move them because he loves every single one of them. But that's important. So if you are married, like it is important that you still, get those kind of things in your day. It's important for your progress that you have healthy relationships. So whether that's friendships, whether that's with, parents, siblings, like whatever that looks like, that actually has a really substantial impact on the way that your body responds to stuff and your stress and things of that nature. So, hopefully, this is super helpful and eye-opening for you guys this week. I love when it's not flashy, but there's big takeaways from it. And as always, we would love for you guys to drop any comments below. If you've been here before and at this point, when you've been not like a major amount down, you've jumped ship and gone to shiny object over here. We love for you to be honest and real about that and what your experience has been with that or where you feel stuck. Maybe the shiny objects that you jump to. We would love to like hear, what it was that you thought would help solve what your current thing was not, right? But then also the focus that this is lifestyle sustainability. So that communication, that openness, the self-awareness, like a lot of what I hope that you're seeing with this is kind of like a self-awareness or feeling like you have permission to say, hey, I really miss fruit. Y'all, when I was in bodybuilding, like back in 2017, when I was in Texas before, the person that was helping me with my nutrition literally had me eat no fruit. No fruit. They were of the camp of like fruit makes you fat, like the natural sugars in it or the devil, like whatever. And that was the hardest thing for me. And one just little Tony Robbins tidbit, like I'll kind of put out there, and I really need to go back. So he and Alex Hermosi did an interview together that Tim and I watched last weekend, and or maybe it was actually earlier this week. It was actually during the week this week. Super impactful to see two amazing leaders, but to especially see Alex Hermosi in that student role and see how open he was. Guys, he could literally not learn from anybody and he doesn't need for anything. Like he could literally not work a day in his life after this and he's fine. But my point is, one of the biggest ahas that he took away from Tony Robbins is like that you have to suffer, like just for something to be worth it, that there has to be suffering. And so sometimes we look for the suffering. Guys, this doesn't have to be something that you suffer for. You can enjoy it. You should enjoy it. And you should work with a coach, somebody that can help make sure that it fits your lifestyle, the things that bring you joy. You know, one of the first things we do with people when they do an onboarding call with us in their intake questionnaire is, okay, what are foods that you cannot live without? For some people, it's like drinks, and it's like, okay, let's figure out how we can work that into your program. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you can drink wine every single night or have burgers and fries every single day, although we do have a guy that we work that in for. It depends on you, your goals, your metabolism, where you're at. There's a lot of factors in there, but we make sure and work that in. And that's important because for you to be able to sustain this for life, you can't feel like you've given up the joy and the things that bring you joy in your life. So, that is all for today. We try to keep these super short, and we will see you next week.